I grew up in that strange middle zone of Michigan. Not quite city, not quite forest. Our trailer park sat 2 miles outside the nearest town, tucked between farmland, empty fields, and quiet woods. A narrow road curved past the park, flanked by 2 long drainage ditches. One short, one winding toward a murky pond hidden behind trees. Most people ignored it. But to me, it always had a strange, brooding feel. Beyond that pond, there was a trail, just 200 yards or so, lined with thick woods on both sides. As a kid, I always gave it a wide berth. Something about it felt off. The kind of place you instinctively don't linger in. I didn't know it yet, but that trail was more than just creepy. It was the edge of something much darker. And my brother, who once lived here with our grandma, warned me about it. He said that land was cursed. He'd tell me tales just before bed about digging up bones, hearing growls without animals, even swearing he'd once unearthed a human skull near the trail. I laughed it off at first, convinced he just wanted to mess with me. But he didn't smile when he said it. His voice got low. He said he saw something there once. A shape in the trees, hunched, watching. He believed the land belonged to something ancient, something angry. Native land, he said. Sacred, maybe. Or damned. I didn't believe him back then. Not really. I figured the stories were just family folklore. Until the day I stepped into those woods myself. Not because I wanted to, but because of a stupid stick. It was a cloudy, windy fall afternoon. My friend Matt and I were outside like always, playing our made-up army game. We didn't have Tor guns, just broken broom handles and snapped branches. The trailer park had empty units with broken doors, shattered windows, and collapsing porches. Perfect battlegrounds for 2 bored kids. I found a stick I loved. Long, sturdy, shaped like a rifle. Matt wasn't so lucky. He wanted something bigger, more machine gun than rifle, and nothing around the trailers fit. Then he pointed toward the trail. I hesitated. We didn't usually go there. Too quiet, too weird. But we were just looking for sticks. What could happen?
We stepped into the trail, surrounded by trees that seemed to lean in too close. The deeper we went, the heavier the air felt, like the forest itself was holding its breath. The cottonwoods above swayed in the wind, groaning and whistling in strange tones. It made my stomach twist. Matt didn't seem to notice. He scanned the ground for big branches while I kept glancing over my shoulder. Off the right side of the path was a patch we called the island. Separated by thorny shrubs, it was a little open space we never entered. But that day, Matt wandered closer, pushing through leaves. I wanted to leave. I was already feeling watched. And then the forest went dead quiet. No birds, no wind, no rustling. Just the sound of Matt digging through sticks and my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I turned to say something, maybe to convince him we should head back. But that's when I saw it. The branches ahead were moving, not swaying with wind, shaking, like someone had grabbed them and was thrashing them violently. Then I heard the crunch, dry leaves just off to my right. I turned, expecting a deer or maybe a neighbor kid, but it wasn't a person, and it wasn't an animal. What I saw still gives me nightmares. It was a solid black figure, hunched, bulky, with long arms hanging low like a gorilla. But it didn't move like any animal I knew. It ran on its toes in this disturbing, twitchy way, almost gliding just above the ground, plowing straight through shrubs and branches like they weren't even there. Its body didn't shimmer or flicker. It was there, real, not some shadow trick. My brain stalled trying to label it, but my body knew better. I slapped Matt's shoulder so hard he stumbled. "Run!" I yelled without looking back. I didn't need him to see it. I just needed him to move. And we did. We moved like our lives depended on it. Because deep down, I think they did. Branches whipped my arms and stung my face. I didn't care. I just ran. We barreled down the trail, dodging stumps and ducking low limbs, my legs burning and lungs on fire. I didn't dare stop. I didn't even look back. The only thing in my head was get out, get out, get out. When we finally burst from the woods, I collapsed near one of the ditches, gasping, trying to piece together what just happened. My shirt was torn, knees scraped. I barely noticed. Matt stumbled out a few seconds later, pale and confused. He hadn't seen what I saw, but he'd heard it. Matt bent over, wheezing, looking back toward the trail like he expected something to burst through. "What the hell was that?" he asked. I told him what I'd seen, how it moved, how close it got. He went silent, then said something that made my stomach twist. He'd paused halfway through the run, just for a second, and heard footsteps behind us. Then he saw something, fast but dragging at the same time, like it was flickering between places. He couldn't describe it clearly, but it moved wrong, impossible. Neither of us had words, but we both knew. Something was out there, and it didn't want us near that trail. After that day, we stayed far away from the woods. Didn't matter how good the stick was. The whole trail felt different now, like it had teeth. We even stopped playing army games. That part of the park, the edge near the island, became dead ground to us, forgotten on purpose. We told a few kids about it, but they laughed. No one believed us. It didn't matter. We weren't going back to prove it. Some places, they want to be left alone, and I think we were lucky it only chased us out. Even now, years later, I don't walk near those woods, not even in daylight. That land doesn't feel empty. It feels guarded, like it's waiting for someone stupid enough to come back. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't run, if we'd frozen, if Matt had stayed a moment longer. But I never let that thought sit too long, because whatever that thing was, it wasn't trying to be seen, and it sure wasn't playing. So if you ever find yourself in mid-Michigan, near a quiet trailer park and a trail that looks a little too still, don't go in. If the woods fall silent, you're already too close. When I was a kid, I had a friend whose house always made me feel uneasy. It was one of those older homes in our town. Dark carved wood trim, a heavy stone basement, and a silence that felt too deliberate. Nothing ever happened outright, but every time I walked in, something deep in my chest told me to stay on edge. As kids, we don't always understand those instincts, so I ignored them. I told myself I was being dramatic, but that house was hiding something I didn't have the words for back then. Two events from that place still live in my mind, years apart, but connected by one thing. The boy in the painting. It started on an ordinary afternoon. My friend and I were playing in his living room, and for the first time, I really noticed the painting by the front door. It showed a young boy on a wooden rocking horse, grinning like he had a secret. But something about it pulled at me, specifically a strange bubble in the paint near his raised hand. It was shaped like a knife, not part of the image, not painted in. It was a physical bulge, like something had grown beneath the surface. I pointed it out to my friend. He barely reacted, just shrugged and said, "Weird stuff like that always happens here." I tried to laugh it off. Paint cracks, weird shapes happen. I went home that evening and didn't give it much more thought, but when I came back the next day, I stopped cold as soon as I saw the painting again. The bubble was gone. The knife shape had vanished like it was never there. But worse, the boy's grin was gone too. His face was blank, serious, like he'd been caught mid-sentence or was suddenly aware we were watching him. I didn't say anything that time. I just stared, because somehow it felt like the boy in the painting had changed because I noticed him. I managed to forget about the painting for a while. Life moved on. But a few years later, I found myself back in that house, this time babysitting my friend's younger sibling. The same creaky floors, same heavy stillness in the air. We were watching a movie in the living room when something snapped me out of the moment. Upstairs, one door slammed shut, then another, then a third. Bang, bang, bang. It wasn't wind. It was too precise, like someone pacing through the hallway and slamming each door behind them. I stood up, heart racing, trying to think logically. Draft? Old hinges? My brain offered excuses, but they didn't fit. I couldn't leave the kid alone, so I forced myself upstairs, switching on every light as I went. The hallway stretched ahead, every door wide open. Nothing looked touched. Nothing made sense. I laughed nervously to myself, turning to go back downstairs. And that's when I saw the dog, frozen at the front door, stiff, staring out with ears pinned back. It wasn't barking. It was growling, low, afraid. The dog didn't move, didn't blink. It was locked onto something beyond the door. I followed its gaze, slowly, feeling my skin start to crawl. Near the front was the door to the basement, the one with a small square window built into it. That window lined up perfectly with a second window that looked outside. And just as I glanced toward it, I saw a face. Not a person, a face. A boy's head, motionless, half lit by the hallway light. His eyes were looking up, like the rest of him was buried. I froze. Every muscle locked. I couldn't even call for help. The face didn't blink. It didn't shift or react. It didn't move away. It just vanished. Like a glitch in reality. One moment there, the next, nothing. No footsteps, no shadows fleeing, just absence. I didn't tell the kid I was babysitting. I didn't want to scare him. But I sat near the front door with the dog until the parents got home. I didn't even pretend to act normal. Because in my gut, I knew. The boy from the painting had found his way out. After that night, I never agreed to babysit there again. I avoided that entire block if I could. Something in that house watches people. I'm sure of it. Not all the time. Just when you look too closely. When you notice. That painting wasn't just decoration. It was a warning. I think my friend knew something too. I once asked him if anything weird ever happened again. He just shrugged, said, "You get used to it." But his eyes told a different story. I sometimes wonder if the painting was the source or just a doorway. It had too many little changes, too many coincidences. One day, there was a knife in the hand. The next, it was gone, and so was the smile. Maybe that bubble wasn't in the paint at all. Maybe something was pressing from the inside. Maybe it was trying to break out. I don't know what lived in that house, but I don't think it ever left. And I don't think it can leave. Not unless someone invites it. Not unless someone looks a little too closely. There are houses that creak with age, and then there are houses that breathe when you're not listening. That one, it breathed. So if you ever find yourself standing in front of an old painting, one with a child smiling just a little too wide, take a closer look. But don't stare too long. Don't try to understand it. Because if the smile starts to fade, it means he's seen you too.